Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have on the show Randi Weingarten, a president of American Federation of Teachers. It's 1.8 million members. She's been a tireless activist, see her all the time fighting the good fight for teachers, for students, and now it's a more acute fight than ever. Randi, thank you so much for being on. We're in a perilous place right now when it comes to education.
First off, Dean, thank you for fighting, and thank you for always kind of being out there proclaiming truth to power. So I just wanted to say thank you. I'm very grateful to you.
I think it's very kind of you, and the same to you. But tell
Thank you.
people, look, Donald Trump, there was a leak last week. They're going to end Department of Education. Look,
Right.
It's a long dream of the right to get rid of Department of Education.
Right.
Tell people, what does the Department of Education do so people understand the importance of it, if you don't mind?
So let me do it in two parts. Let me do the specifics, but then let me do the big 30,000 feet away.
Sure.
On the specifics, the Department of Education federally does not run schools. We have a federal system in the United States of America. So back from even the beginning of the United States, the original colonies, the original states, the states ran their own education systems. And as public education became more and more important, you basically had local school boards running education all throughout America, 16,000 school districts. So what the Department of Education does is it fills opportunity gaps. It basically started as the war on poverty from Johnson, in the 1960s. He was a teacher before he was a politician, and he taught in a rural school, Mexican-American kids mostly in Texas. Mm-hmm. And he saw the abject poverty. And what he did when he got to the White House was he said, if we believe in opportunity for all, if we believe in capitalism, if we believe in entrepreneurship, if we believe in the American dream, then we have to make sure there's a ladder of opportunity that everybody can climb and every child can climb. So that's what that's what the first monies that we got from Washington was about. Title I is one of those funding formulas. And they don't stop at the state, they go right to schools in districts, so we can lower class size for poor kids. We can have a reading specialist when literacy is an issue. We can have after school programs. We can have summer school programs. It really is about supplementing and ensuring that kids who are poor have the kind of resources they need so that they can compete with kids who are not poor. So that was number one. That's the biggest pot of money. 26 million kids get that pot of money. And Dean, the biggest state winners are red states. If you actually look at how the pot gets distributed, it's red states and it's poor districts in red states. So that's number one. Now, every other piece of this money that the Department of Education distributes, it's basically what its job is. It's also for kids where there's a real necessity that Americans believe in. So kids with disabilities, 7.5 million kids. That's where the federal money comes from. It's called the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, or something called 504 from the Rehabilitation Act. The next pot of money is something that is really close to my heart, which is all that money that goes to try to have career tech ed, Perkins it's called, so that we can actually help kids become welders, become plumbers, go into advanced manufacturing. The school districts don't have the money to create those labs. So there's about 12 million kids get money that way. Then there's about 12 million kids for whom, they can't afford college. They get what's called Pell Grants. Then there's about 5 million kids who, come into school lacking English proficiency. Donald Trump just made English the law of the land. But, we need to help kids. And it can't just be on the individual teacher. So 5.5 million kids get that. So you can see what this department does it's an engine of opportunity. It actually makes sure that the money that the federal government gives us doesn't get wasted. It goes directly to schools, and somebody has to be accountable for that. Now,
Right.
they have other roles too. There's two other main roles. The second main role is that when kids get screwed, excuse my language, the place that somebody goes to, like, let's take anti-Semitism. If there's anti-Semitism on a campus, the place that somebody goes to is called the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education. Same if a kid who's disabled doesn't get her shot at life, and the money that's supposed to come to her doesn't come to her. So that was the balls and strikes agency. And you didn't have to have a lawyer to go. But if a parent felt like their kid, that something was wrong, their kid was being discriminated against, that's where a parent could go. And, and the third is, after the fiscal crisis in 2008, the Department of Education became basically a big bank for student loans and for student financial aid. So instead of, it was the scandals were in all the banks. So Obama brought it into the Department of Education. So if you are going to file for a student loan, even though if you file through the Department of Education, if you're going to file for student aid for your kid, you file through the Department of Education. So it is actually the department that does assist for lots of kids in America and lots of families in America. Doesn't run anything in education,
Right.
but it just is a big assist. So all those things, that's millions of people. What's going to happen? Who's going to distribute that money in a way that's fair and reasonable? Is it going to be, Donald Trump? Who's going to distribute it? Who's going to make sure that that kid in Texas who needs that literacy tutor gets that literacy tutor? Who's going to make sure we have wraparound communities, services like mental health or guidance or nursing services? So that's the meat and potatoes. But the 30,000 feet issue is this. You're talking about the smallest department in the United States of America, the department whose only mission is to help make sure our next generations of children get access to a decent education.
Right.
And that's the department that the right wing wants to get rid of. That's the department that Donald Trump campaigned on, the one that's about opportunity for all in the future. So symbolically, it sends a terrible message, because we all believe that education should be done locally, but sending the message that you want to throttle in a moment where we need real opportunity for our kids, you want to throttle that opportunity? No.
Why do you get a sense there's the hostility on the right towards higher education, certainly, and the Department of Education itself?
I think I think there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, this was a Jimmy Carter thing. I mean, my union, frankly, when it was started, we kept saying, keep education in HEW, in health, education, welfare, because my union, Al Shanker was the president then, would say, we want to keep education with family. We don't want kids to be separated out, because we don't want them to be target practice. We don't want them to be the target of a culture war. So I think what's happened is, because it was started under a Democratic president, and because, Carter started it, it was always a talking point on the right in terms of getting rid of it. So that's the political angle, but I think it's deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason. I think that since, frankly, Brown versus Board of Education, there has been a real anger and antipathy, sorry for the SAT word, but a real antipathy towards equal opportunity, towards leveling up. And remember, after Brown, there was this boycott in Virginia of schools. There was this sense that's where the word choice came from. And I think this whole notion of attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion as somehow woke. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is about our world getting fairer, our world getting that everyone should have access to freedom and opportunity. And I think that what's happened is that the Department of Education was about how you help the other have the opportunities and the bounty of the American dream. And there's always been antipathy towards that. And I think that that's the root cause here. You see it in terms of the culture wars. You see it in terms of this, in terms of the meanness with which people talk about diversity now and inclusion now and equity now. These are values that we should be proud of, that we've made our country more diverse and we've made our country more equal. Does that mean that, you know, we shouldn't be focused on merit or innovation or opportunity for all? Should we not be focused on, you know, a white male child as much as we're focused on, you know, let me take myself, you know, a lesbian girl? But of course we should be focused on both. Sure. But historically, we weren't focused on the other. We weren't focused on the minority. And so that department was very much about how we leveled up opportunity.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And going back to Brown v. Board of Education, it actually resonates with me on a certain level. What we're seeing is a regressive movement that, you know, they were successful in overturning Roe v. Wade, and it's one issue after the other. And they'll circle back to marriage equality when they get a chance. It's just, I've learned progress is not permanent firsthand in the last few years, and we're continuing with that fight.
You know, I don't know if you saw it, Dean, but I saw the musical Suffs on Broadway a couple of times. And one of the songs that I was taken with, progress is possible, not guaranteed. And, you know, and we used to believe, I think, at least for me, I really did believe what King said, which was that the arc of the universe did bend towards justice, that it bent towards that kind of morality, it bent towards that kind of freedom for all. Right. I think what we've seen, and, you know, and you've seen the extreme right wing use this anger, it snapped. And we have to actually rebuild that, because a country that that's not, I mean, look, we are the first multi-racial, multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy that's really ever lived. And the real question is, can the republic sustain that as we become more and more diverse? And there's a whole bunch of people who say no, or hell no. And there are a whole lot of us that are like, no, that's not who we are. We want to be the nation of immigrants that believe in broad-based opportunity for all. That's really what education is a tool of. It's basically saying it doesn't matter what your upbringing is. We are going to do whatever we can to help create broad-based opportunity.
Education, to me, is one of the great levelers of it brings, like you're saying, levels up. It gives people opportunity. And if you have those tools, you can use education and bring it with you wherever you go in life, as I've learned.
Right.
Like different fields, different careers. I'm telling you, with Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. You mentioned in your answer about choice, you know, there's a continuing, and we just had a Texas state representative on about their plan, which he calls a scam down there. But in general, without getting into the Texas one, in the big picture, when we hear school choice vouchers, what is the real world impact on public schools by these vouchers?
Well, it's a defunding mechanism. I mean, think about it. Every parent in my view, every public school should be a place where parents want to send their kids, where educators want to work, and where kids succeed, where kids thrive. And in, you have and should have lots of different choices for kids. Some kids love drama, some kids love math, some kids love shop, some kids say none of the above. Just give me some sports or give me my, games. But part of what we have to do as teachers is we have to actually find that passion and turn it into purpose. I mean, that's part of what, so kids, frankly, every school or every school system should have a whole bunch of choices for kids. Choice is not a bad word, it's a good word. But the difference is what the people who believe in, quote, school choice basically are saying is that they defund public schools. They throw lots of barbs, lots of smears, lots of challenges, so that the only option that looks attractive to a parent, the only safe option, the only option with resources is the private option. Because a lot of these people who believe in so-called school choice, I mean, it started to say as a way of saying to people whose kids were not going to great schools, here, this way you have another option. But right now, what it really is the people who don't believe in public schools or don't believe in that kind of pluralism. And it's a fragmentation and defunding mechanism. So, because if they really believed in school choice, they'd be spending as much time making the public schools a great choice too. But what essentially happens is they believe in the school's choice, not the parents' choice, but the school's choice. And what we've learned from all these voucher experiments in the last decade is two things. Number one, they basically defund schools. Three things, actually. Number two, the people who basically get the vouchers are already sending their kids to private schools. And the private schools that are attractive to parents then hike their tuition and whatever, so that it's really basically a tax cut for people who are already sending their kids to private schools, if you get what I'm saying.
Yep.
And the third thing is, every time there's a plebiscite, there's an election, there is some kind of ballot initiative that says, do you want vouchers or do you not want vouchers? The vouchers lose. So this just happened in November of 2024, including in two places where Trump won overwhelmingly, vouchers lost. And now in Texas, the question is, do you want a voucher? And 65% of the public were like, no, we do not want you to do this. And then that number goes way up when they hear that they may have to have a property tax increase if the defunding happens from vouchers.
And we had Representative Tellerico on from Texas last week talking about the very thing that you're saying. These people are already sending their children to school. They're already financially generally well off. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but generally, and this is just a windfall for them at the expense of the average taxpayer.
Exactly. And then let me just say, think about what happens in Texas in particular. All those rural schools, they don't have the choice. They don't have like a private school or a charter school down the street. So it just basically defunds them.
Yeah. It's exactly what he was saying, and this is a vitally important point. For lots of things, one is Project 2025 calls for the end of the Head Start program. It's one of the programs Trump froze right away when they came in. And I just wanted to touch on about what Head Start does and how vitally important it is for so many young kids.
So
and parents
Head Start was, one of the big precursors of pre-K education, 3K, 4K, also, how you have some way of frankly subsidizing childcare, which is hugely expensive for parents. So how do you put parents in a vice that says you have to work or you're working? But basically childcare starts or private pre-K, costs an arm and a leg more than what you can earn when you're working. You're putting people in a catch-22 situation. So that's on the economic side. On the education side, it's just look at the research on the brain, which says that our brains are really supple. They're just really going a mile a minute when you're 1, 2, 3, 4. So why are we not helping kids, particularly kids who may not have books at home, particularly kids who may, English may not be a language spoken at home, and yet, kids need to learn English. How do you try and make sure that as the brain is learning so much in terms of social development and academic development, you want to help kids get ahead. So this is, again, about opportunity, particularly for poor kids. Rich parents, middle-class parents, if they can, they send their kids to nursery school or to pre-K. This was a way of saying, let's make this available for all kids.
And the fact that they want to get rid of it, it's programs like Head Start and pre-K are an investment in the future of your nation. Like
Exactly.
I've had experts on, it's not about helping one person or not. All of us are benefited by the children learning at an earlier age. They contribute more to our society, they have more opportunity in life. It's fundamentally important. So last thing, this week on my show is Fight Back Week. We fight every week against Trump, but this one's especially. I know you just had a huge event last week, 2,000 events across the country to protect students, protect our Kids Day. What do you recommend? You've been a longtime activist here with grassroots activism. What do you recommend to people who are listening? They're the grassroots in terms of activism. What's the most effective way? What should we be doing?
First off, number one, don't give up. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, do something. It doesn't matter what, yes, of course, long-term it matters. Voting really, really, really matters.
Sure.
But part of the authoritarian playbook is to get you to give up. Part of the disinformation and misinformation is to say, I don't know who's right, who's wrong, so I'm just going to throw up my hands. Part of it is basically, oh my God, this is so much. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to hide under a rock. And what happens is that countries that have lost their democracies, people who have lost their freedoms and their voice, it's because the opposition goes silent. The opposition goes dead. So we believe in democracy. We've had a republic for a lot of years, over 200.
Yep.
We believe in it. It has to get strengthened. It has to get better. We need a better quality of life. We need to lower the cost. There's a whole lot of things we need to do. But we, the people, have been in charge. We don't want an autocrat. We don't want a dictator. We don't want a king. That's not ever who the United States of America is. So don't give up. And then there's lots of things, there's in education. We had thousands of people joining us on our walk-ins, our clap-ins, our rallies. Join us. We need people to help make sure that kids have a decent education. There's a fight against their attempting to take Social Security or Medicare.
Amen.
There's Indivisible. There's Move On. There's the veteran groups. Go on to Blue Sky. It's free. Go get involved in one of these groups. My wife, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, just started something called the Beacon Project in New York City in terms of having a split screen as somebody is cruel, they're trying to do something that meets that cruelty, that combats that cruelty. So there's lots of things. Join a Facebook group, join a letter writing campaign, find a candidate that you say, I like this candidate. Go to a rally, go to a protest, go to a town hall, find something that sparks your interest and do something. You will feel like you are contributing to ensuring that we save our democracy and save a way of life so that we, the people, not a king, have a role in our country, our future, and our kids have that kind of America that we always dream of and believe in.
Very well put, Randy. And if you get involved, not only do you feel like you're saving our republic, you actually are. And that's how we do it collectively. So, Randy, it was great connecting with you on the show. Thanks so much, especially this big week. And I look forward, we'll chat again. We'll see how things go on the education front. I hope it's good news, but I have a feeling it's going to be even more challenging, trying news, but we continue the fight. We don't stop. The challenges endure, and so do we. So thank you, Randy. Have a great night. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Dean.